Ever wondered how your favorite bread is made? Bread, in its many shapes and forms, has been a staple food for centuries, from the rustic loaves of the countryside to the delicate pastries of the finest bakeries. But what goes into making these doughy delights? Well, it all starts with the art of baking bread. It's a process that combines science with creativity, precision with freedom, and most importantly, hands with heart. Each step, from selecting the ingredients to kneading the dough to the final bake, is a journey of discovery and joy. Understanding this process is not only important for the aspiring baker, but for anyone who appreciates the simple pleasure of a warm slice of homemade bread. It's about more than just food, it's about creating something with your own hands, something that nourishes both body and soul. So without further ado, let's dive into the wonderful world of baking bread. First things first, gather all the ingredients. We're about to embark on a culinary adventure, and these are our trusty companions. Every bread recipe starts with 4 basic ingredients: flour, water, yeast, and salt. Flour, the backbone of our bread, provides the structure. It's the canvas on which we paint our masterpiece. Water, the life giver, activates the yeast and helps blend our ingredients into a smooth, elastic dough. Yeast, our invisible helper, works its magic to make our dough rise, giving our bread its light, airy texture. Salt, the flavor enhancer, does more than just season our bread. It helps control yeast activity and strengthens the dough. For those with a sweet tooth, you can add a sprinkle of sugar. It will give your bread a slight sweetness and help in browning. And a dash of oil can make your bread soft and tender. Now that we have all our ingredients, it's time to start our baking journey. Now comes the fun part, mixing the ingredients. Our journey towards the perfect loaf begins by waking up our tiny friends, the yeast. We start by activating the yeast, a process that involves a warm bath of water and a sprinkle of sugar. This sweet concoction allows the yeast to bloom, turning it into a frothy mixture. The yeast's job is to make our bread rise, giving it that fluffy, airy texture we all know and love. Next, we move on to the flour. We're not just dumping it in, we're gently introducing it to the yeast mixture. It's a delicate dance that sets the stage for the texture of our bread. The flour is gradually incorporated, ensuring a smooth and well-combined dough. Remember, patience is key here. A rushed process may lead to a dense and heavy loaf, and nobody wants that. Now we add in a pinch of salt for taste and a dash of oil for that lovely, soft crumb. These 2 ingredients are small but mighty, contributing significantly to the flavor and texture of our bread. Once all the ingredients are in, it's time for a little bit of elbow grease. Mixing the dough is where the magic happens. It's a workout for your arms, but the end result is absolutely worth it. We're aiming for a dough that is smooth, elastic, and slightly sticky. This is where our bread starts to take shape, quite literally. But don't be fooled. Even though this might seem like a simple process, it's crucial. The order and method of mixing impact the final texture of the bread. Too much mixing, and you'll end up with a tough loaf; too little, and your bread might not rise properly. So there we have it, a well-mixed dough that's ready for the next step. It's been through a lot, so it's time for it to take a little nap. This rest period allows the yeast to work its magic, transforming our dough into a beautiful, fluffy loaf. Once the dough is well combined and smooth, it's time to let it rest. Scene script. Patience is a virtue, especially in baking. It's time for the dough to rise. Proofing, also known as proving or the final fermentation, is an essential step in the bread-making process. It's the quiet moment where you let the yeast do all the work, transforming your dense ball of dough into a light and airy masterpiece. So what's happening during this process? Well, the yeast is feasting on the sugars in the dough, producing carbon dioxide gas and alcohol. This gas gets trapped in the dough, causing it to rise and increase in volume. The alcohol, on the other hand, evaporates during baking and contributes to the bread's flavor. Now, the ideal conditions for yeast to grow and multiply are warmth, moisture, and food. That's why we usually cover the dough and place it in a warm spot. The dough's temperature should ideally be around 25 to 27 degrees Celsius, or 77 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold temperatures slow down yeast activity, while hot temperatures can kill the yeast. So, maintaining the right temperature is crucial. The time it takes for the dough to rise can vary, depending on the yeast's activity, the dough's temperature, and the amount of sugar and fat in the dough. However, a general rule of thumb is that the dough should double in size. This can take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours, but trust me, it's worth the wait. So how can you tell when the dough is ready for the next step? It's all about the poke test. Gently poke the dough with your finger. If the indentation fills back slowly, the dough has proofed enough. If it springs back immediately, give it some more time. And if the dough deflates, it's overproofed, but don't worry, you can always knead it, and start the proofing process again. After the dough has doubled in size, it's time for the next exciting step: shaping. Now the dough is ready to take shape. Once your dough has been proofed and is full of airy potential, it's time to shape it into its final form, a loaf. Shaping the dough is a delicate dance between you and your dough. You're guiding it, encouraging it to take the form that will best serve its final purpose. Let's start with a basic shape, the round loaf or boule. Begin by lightly dusting your work surface with flour. Then place your dough on the surface, gently pressing it into a flat, round shape. Now fold the dough's edges towards the center, creating tension on the surface. The goal is to create a smooth, tight ball of dough. For a baguette, the process is a bit more intricate. After flattening the dough into a rectangle, you'll fold the dough lengthwise, sealing the seam with your fingers. Then, with your palms, you'll gently roll the dough back and forth, stretching it into a long, thin loaf. If you're making a sandwich loaf, you'll need a loaf pan. Again, start by flattening your dough into a rectangle. Then, just like the baguette, fold it lengthwise and seal the seam. The difference here is that you'll place the dough seam side down in your greased loaf pan. Each of these shapes has its own charm and affects the final result. A boule is perfect for tear and share bread, while a baguette's long, thin shape gives it a crusty exterior and soft, airy interior. Meanwhile, the sandwich loaf is designed to yield uniform slices perfect for sandwiches. Remember, shaping the dough isn't just about appearance, it also affects how the bread bakes. A round loaf will bake evenly all around, while a baguette's shape allows for a larger crust area. And a sandwich loaf with its regulated shape will yield a uniform crumb structure. So, have fun shaping your dough. Be patient and gentle. Remember, it's not just about making it look good. It's about creating a loaf that bakes well and tastes incredible. With the dough shaped, it's almost time to bake. The moment you've been waiting for: baking the bread. Now that we've shaped our dough and let it rise, it's time to bake it into a beautiful loaf of bread. The baking process is where the magic happens, where our dough transforms into golden, crusty, delicious bread. Before we begin, let's preheat our oven. The ideal temperature is usually around 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Preheating is crucial, as it ensures that your bread will start cooking as soon as it hits the oven, creating a perfect crust and a fully cooked interior. Once our oven is preheated, we're ready to place the dough inside. Carefully transfer your dough onto a baking tray or into a loaf pan. If you're using a loaf pan, make sure it's greased well to prevent sticking. If you're free-forming your bread, you might want to use a baking stone for that extra crispy crust. Now let's talk about baking times. The exact time can vary depending on the size of your loaf and your specific oven, but a good rule of thumb is about 20 to 25 minutes for smaller loaves and up to 35 to 40 minutes for larger ones. Remember, these are just guidelines, so keep an eye on your bread as it bakes. But how do you know when your bread is done? Well, there's a simple test you can do. Take the bread out of the oven and tap the bottom. If it sounds hollow, your bread is done. If not, put it back in the oven for a few more minutes. Baking bread is as much an art as it is a science. It's about understanding the nuances of your ingredients, your oven, and trusting your instincts. It may take a few tries to get it right, but once you do, the result is nothing short of magical. And there you have it, your own homemade bread fresh from the oven. Baking bread at home is not just about the end result, but the journey. Indeed, the process of making bread, from gathering the ingredients through the mixing process, to the art of proofing and shaping the dough, culminates in the delightful act of baking the bread itself. Each step a testament to the art of baking, a dance of flour, yeast, and water. The satisfaction and joy that comes from creating your own bread is unparalleled. The smell that fills your home, the warmth of the freshly baked loaf in your hands, and the taste of your very own homemade bread. It's an experience that's hard to describe, but easy to fall in love with. Don't hesitate to give a try, and feel free to experiment with different types of bread. Whether it's a classic white loaf, a hearty whole grain, or a crusty sourdough, the possibilities are endless. So what story will your bread? Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting facts about baking.